Okay, here we are, part 3. Alright, so basically Thomas is, of course, he's starting to get ticked off. Rocky's taking the credit for him finding the ship. And, of course, that's just a, miscommunication there. Like, even after all, Thomas was, of course, not on his best behavior, per se. So, yeah, at the scene back at, the Harwick branch line where, they're lifting the pirate ship out of the cavern, and I'm like, you're kidding. Could Rocky really lift the whole pirate ship out of the cavern? Because that thing is huge. So, yeah, after the boat's lifted right out of the cavern, like, this amazes everybody. And the Fat Controller, decides to have it put on display over at Arlesburg Harbor. And while that's going on, like, the pack members, Marion and Donald and Douglas, are wondering, like, how did the ship get in? And this is another instance I like in Donald and Douglas's character. Like, at first, Jack, makes an assumption that, you could fold it up like model ships they put in bottles. But I like how Donald, sums it up by saying, nonsense. And saying that, the pirate ship must have, sailed into the cavern centuries ago. And that, I actually did like that scene, just, seeing that we do get a glimpse into Donald and Douglas's personality, but then Marion starts thinking that if there is a pirate ship, then maybe there's buried treasure, and that she actually wants to go look it up. And so Marion goes back over to the ballast chute, where Mike, Rex, and Bert are, shunting their ballast hoppers. And you gotta admit, this scene is funny, where, she tries to make a wish that she could find the treasure without even knowing that the Arlesdale engines are not magical. Oh my god. And you gotta admit, it was funny where Bert is like, is she talking about us? And I even love the scene where Rex even starts teasing, yeah, that's actually one glimpse of, the Arlesdale engine's personalities. Like, Bert being, I guess Bert having the better judgment and more of the quiet one. I don't know. I don't really know Bert that well. Except for, that time in the book where he accidentally sprayed the Reverend Audrey and Reverend Teddy Boston. So, yeah. We even get, of course, Mike being taken aback was an example of his personality. And for Rex, basically, the only glimpse that we get from him is the, of how he enjoys being cheeky towards Mike. Yeah, I think, the banter between Rex and Mike is pretty funny, and in this movie, it's just, Rex obviously being cheeky towards him. So yeah, while Rex and Bert leave, Mike tries to get off of the chute, but Marion just uses she just uses her shovel to block him. I was literally, the scene was freaking hilarious, where, Marion, tries, making a wish towards Mike, but Mike is, trying to get off the chute, like, make a wish? Let go, you crazy psycho! It's like, but you made Oliver a wish. Of course, poor Mike has obviously no idea what she's talking about. You gotta feel sorry for him, but it's just gold in this scene. So at the moment where Marion, takes her shovel off, and then Mike, just starts, running away like the wind, like, Marion still thinks she's magical, and, seriously, that's... Hold on. Alright, sorry about that, guys. A few of my, folks were up the stairs were talking, and it was distracting. Alright, so, yeah, after that scene, we do see, the pirate ship, of course, being, shunted over to the dockside of Arlesburg Harbor, and the scene itself was, oh my gosh, it was amazing. The musicals, this is one example of the City of Prague's, score, as well as Rob and Peter Hartshorn are obviously, composing, but the orchestra, they did, oh my god, it's just, so amazing to hear. So yeah, the ship is actually being shunted by Donald and Douglas, and that's another thing. I mean, hey, at least they actually take the pirate ship there. But I wish they could have made a comment about it, like, does this thing look, like, hey, Donald, does this thing look amazing? Yay, it looks exactly like one of those old pirate ships back in our home in Scotland. I don't know, I mean, I'm not really, bright with Scottish heritage, so, yeah, I mean, I was thinking maybe this could have been in medieval Scotland or something, but, never mind. So, yeah, I was thinking Donald and Douglas could have remarked on something in their Scottish heritage, but that's aside the point. So, yes. While Donald and Douglas are taking the ship over to the docks, like, it's funny where, like, everyone, is just staring at us like, oh. And it's funny where the Sodor brass band is looking at this as well, and then one of them just drops their cymbals, like, that was, I just cracked myself up there. So yeah, when Donald and Douglas arrive at Allsburg Harbor, I'll just say, too, yeah, the harbor, this is another reason of why Art Productions is so much better than Nitrogen. The layouts they do, oh my gosh, I could stare at this, like, CGI layout of Allsburg Harbor for, like, hours. This whole fishing village. I mean, seriously, the way it looks, kind of like, I mean, this obviously is on the Little Western, I know for sure, because it does say Allsburg, the Allsburg branch line, and we do see that sort of, that kind of familiar fishing village from the classic series, and it looks so, oh my, it's so beautiful, really. Oh, and especially down at the pier, like, it looks amazing too, and the water, but we'll talk about that more later. So yeah, after like, the Scottish twins, like, shunt, like, the, pirate ship over in a siding, and I don't have no idea how Donald's gonna get out of that, seeing that he just kind of closed himself in there. And, well, there is, I think there's a switch track there, but, so yeah, while, Donald and Douglas get the ship shunted down at the pier, like, that same mysterious man in the sailboat skiff start witnessing it all. Of course, we'll see why he wants it later, but then in another scene, Henry, of course, is pulling, the flying kipper, I think it's the flying kipper, and at the same time, he witnesses that strange man, and, of course, his sailboat. And I don't know if that could happen, but he even, runs into a siding, and it's funny, it was like, ow. So, yeah. Oh, and something else. About Henry's, cowardly attitude, it's fine. To be honest, I guess this rule could have kind of worked for Percy. I mean, heck, this rule, now that I think about it, Percy would have worked well for this rule, but, oh well. Besides, Percy's really not in the movie that much. So yeah, Henry, of course, explains this to, like, the other, like, he explains it to the other engines over at Brendam Docks about what he saw, but obviously they start, thinking, that he may have been seeing things at night in the fog. And at one point, Bill and Ben, who, this is the only appearance that they make in the film, even, start making a wisecrack towards him. And then, Salty, in fact, I was thinking that since this is a pirate, like, sort of film, that Salty would have, who of course is into that stuff and is a pirate-based character, would have, told the story, and I'm glad he did, because it wouldn't be a sea-related, Thomas, like, anything in Thomas that has to do with, like, the sea or pirates should have Salty, in my opinion. So, yeah. Salty starts telling Edward, James, Henry, Porter, and Cranky that many, like, centuries ago, and, like, in the 16th century, that there was a pirate known as Captain Cowles who was actually stealing the pirate treasure. I don't remember it too well, so I'm going to try the best I can here. That he stole them from, like, merchant ships, and that the Navy, of course, was going after him, and that Captain Cowles, like, he buried his treasure so that no one could find him, and even made a map so he could keep track, but he lost it in the wind. Yeah, and I even love, like, the animated sequence, kind of like in King of the Railway, when Stephen was telling, his story. Oh, and especially that other intro in that. But aside from that, I actually think it was done well. And we even get some big vocabulary words for kids to understand, like merchant ships or navy. Yeah, I'm so glad that they're actually using big vocabularies here. That way kids will learn them later on. That's good. Yeah, and there's something else. Like, each special I've noticed so far has its own different motif. And here's what I mean. Like in King of the Railway, it was medieval times. In Tale of the Brave, it was dinosaurs and fossils. And now in this movie, it's pirates. So yeah, after Salty ends the story, Henry of course says, But it was true. But of course they obviously wouldn't believe him. And meanwhile, after Thomas is repaired, but not repainted, yeah, like he is repaired, but they don't, like, spend any time in cleaning and repainting him, obviously because, you know, he's still in disgrace. And I know that the Fat Controller is like, you know, he thinks, Thomas, you don't deserve to be repainted after this accident, so as your punishment, you will do your job anyway. But, shut up and do it! So, yeah, Thomas isn't really going through a good time in this. And he's still aggravated when he sees the pirate ship. He's like, Rocky didn't find that treasure. And while that's going on, that mysterious figure, you know, is still on board the ship. And don't worry, we'll get to him very soon. So yeah, while Thomas is taking on coal to start work, he sees Ryan now at the construction project, who, the Fat Controller, I mean, it's obvious why he's working there, because after Thomas's accident. And we do see that the Fat Controller, you know, is starting to become a lot more proud of Ryan, but is starting to show a lot of disappointment in Thomas. So yeah, like, after Ryan leaves, you know, promising to keep up the good work, Thomas tries to ask if he could go back to his branch line, which, to be honest, that's not a very good question to ask your boss. Like, the Fat Controller tells him no, that he's still, you know, being well, why am I keep saying, like, he's still on parole, per se, like, he still has plenty of work to do here, and that Percy will be taking care of the branch line. So, yeah, after he sends Thomas to go collect some more ballast, of course, he still comes to the conclusion, he starts coming to the conclusion that the Fat Controller, you know, he's starting to hate him, and that he's no longer the #1 engine on the Northwestern. And he even complains about this all to the Earlsdale engines once again, at the same time learning he has taken some bad coal, which, honestly, I don't know if you can change coal in an engine. Maybe you could. So yeah, after, like, they change him to good coal later on, because, well, never mind. So yeah, after that, he goes to the shed, but he immediately leaves after Ryan comes in. And here's another reason why this is better than The Great Discovery. Like in the scene where Thomas arrives at Tidmouth Sheds and sees Stanley, like, he's already in his berth, and it's like, oh, hey, you must be Thomas, and he's kind of an asshole. But here, Ryan is far from an asshole. He's actually very nice to Thomas. And I actually do like him. Don't get me wrong, I do like Stanley, but how Ryan is handled in this movie is so believable. But Thomas, of course, is naturally just being a jerk, as he still has a grudge against him. So while he leaves, this is where he comes across that man, and of course Skiff. And where he does show up, that's when they introduce each other. Like, the man is, of course, named John. Sailor John. That line was classic, yeah. So, I'll say it now. So, yes, Sailor John, of course, introduces himself to Thomas, as well as the sailboat Skiff. And, yeah, and I think I will talk about them. Yes, I will say it. Obviously, Sailor John is revealed to be the villain of this film. Heck, those scenes earlier it just gives us the indication that he's the villain. Well, not for Skiff, though. I mean, because Skiff, he's actually just a very nice... In fact, he's kind of adorable. Yeah, like, Skiff is just as adorable as, you know, plenty of characters like Percy, Paxton, Luke, and, yeah, I think he does well. Oh, and just like Marion and Ryan, Sailor John and Skiff are both voiced by A-listers as well. Like, Skiff is voiced by Jamie Campbell Bower. I think it was Bower or Bower, I don't remember. Yeah. Who is best known for his work in the Harry Potter, like in the last two Harry Potter films, The Deathly Hallows, though he was also in another franchise, which I swear I will not talk about, and I never will. And Sailor John, of course, is voiced by none other than Sir John Hurt. I mean, out of all people, John Hurt in Thomas the Tank Engine. I gotta say, he does a phenomenal job. In fact, like with Eddie Redmayne, both Jamie Campbell Bower and John Hurt said that even they were fans of Thomas too. So, yeah. I gotta say this too, that the animation on Sailor... Oh yeah, I think John Hurt, does a phenomenal... Doug Walker, of course, once said that everything John Hurt does is, gold, I think, yeah. And I think that John Hurt does a phenomenal job at voicing a pirate character. With that pirate accent. Arrgh! So, yeah, Sailor John explains that for many years, he and Skiff have been searching all over Sodor for buried treasure. And while they're digging around, we also do get hints in Skiff that not only is a nice guy, but you can't help but feel sorry for him, as he really just wants to, he's not jealous of, the engines. He wants to be, an engine himself and roll along the rails, as, Sailor John did make, a special, cart for him to roll on, well, on the rails. And you do feel sorry for him for the fact that he has to keep, bobbing his face down in the water like that. I mean, heck, I, hate doing it myself, because I can't breathe that long. So, yes, while that's going on, the three of, Thomas immediately becomes friends with the two strangers, and while that's happening, Sailor John ends up, finding the map to, the map that Captain Callus had for his treasure, but naturally, they can't, be seen in daylight, so they have to end their search and continue it only at nighttime. But Skiff can't get back because, of course, seeing that he is a sailboat, he'll need wind power. So yeah, Thomas, of course, Thomas decides to help, give him a push back to, the pier. And while that's happening, Ryan starts noticing Thomas with Skiff and Sailor John. But Thomas, when he meets up with him later, he denies it as a dream. And of course, the fact Thomas still hates Ryan's axles at the moment, which is my own term for saying you hate someone's guts, well, for a talking train, that is, Ryan takes on the same bad cold that Thomas took, but Thomas doesn't tell him, as he still hates him and wants to try and get him in trouble as possible. So yeah, when Ryan, after he takes on the bad cold, he heads over to Brendam Docks to go collect a special delivery. And meanwhile, while that's all happening, Marion, of course, as well as, is still, in denial that, of course, that Oliver the steam engine is Oliver the excavator, and that the Arsenal. But yeah, there's certain scenes. Oh, excuse me, I had to crack my toe. Yeah, she still thinks, while she's in her own little world, which is still pretty funny, I will say. And you gotta admit, it was kind of funny where both Alfie and Oliver are, kind of dicks to her, yeah, sure, Marion, of course you will. And so yeah, when Ryan, the problem is now that the rest of, the construction project can't move further because there's rock in the way and they need dynamite to clear it. And that's what Ryan was sent to get. You gotta admit, you kind of feel sorry for him that Thomas tricked him into taking the bad coal as he's just coughing and, shooting sparks from his funnel, which is worse, which I don't understand why, the dynamite would have been carried in, open wagons when it could have been carried, of course, in vent fans. That way the steam engine sparks, wouldn't set them alight. But if that wouldn't happen, then we wouldn't have a story now, would we? So, yes. After, like, Ryan, like, accidentally takes on the bad coal, like, it gets worse when the dynamite starts catching alight, and Thomas starts realizing his mistake, too. So, yeah, Ryan biffs it, but Marion has no idea, and she, stops the trucks, and, like, takes the dynamite out of her shovel, like, right into her shovel, and starts realizing, and she tries to blow it out, and at one point she almost throws it at Alfie, and then Alfie throws it to Jack, and you gotta admit, it was pretty funny where, like, they actually do this little hot potato with the dynamite. Like, that was... But it gets even funnier, like, after the whole hot potato shindig, Jack accidentally, like, throws the dynamite right back in the truck. Uh-oh. And you gotta admit, it was funny where Oliver is like, safely? Yeah, but it gets even worse. So yeah, like, Thomas, of course, tries to shunt the dynamite away, but Ryan, of course, he accidentally ends up right in the front of the train, but while Thomas is shunting it at the other end. So yeah, Thomas, of course, like, basically, Ryan gets away, but Thomas is actually able to do something responsible for once. Yeah, like, Thomas actually, like, he shunts the dynamite far away as possible and right back into the very cavern that he fell down, where the pirate ship was. Of course, everyone congratulates him, but guess who decides to show up? Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Yeah, then there's this scene. Yeah, at that moment, Sir Topham Hatt shows up, and naturally, he's freaking pissed again. I mean, the other two reasons you can understand, but in this one, I was enraged. I mean, if any of you guys were just as annoyed with the Fat Controller in this scene, don't worry. You're not alone, because, damn it! I mean, I was so enraged at the Fat Controller in this scene. Heck, he really is the Fat Controller. Okay, I'm sorry for sounding offensive, but come on, you catch my drift. He's such a freaking asshole in this. Like, he still thinks, like, the reason he's, like, he's enraged at Thomas this time is because he saw him, chasing Ryan with the dynamite, thinking he was trying to kill him. Well, not kill him, but hurt him, that sort of thing. Like, he still thinks Thomas is up to his old tricks, when no doubt Thomas was actually doing the right thing. Okay, well, though, granted, the dynamite incident was Thomas's fault. I mean, technically, that was his fault, because if he didn't trick Ryan into taking the bad coal, then they wouldn't have been set alight. Now, wouldn't it? But for once, Thomas, but the Fat Controller, he doesn't even let him explain. But Thomas actually, tries to, explain by saying, it's not my fault. And, of course, that enrages the Fat Controller, still thinking that he's still making excuses, as, like, he's had enough of it. So, like, he's still, like, enraged, just kind of like the way a parents would be, if, at their own, like, children for even if they were causing mischief or were doing something innocent, like, you, young man, are like, Thomas the Tank Engine, what the fuck are you think you're doing? I mean, seriously. I mean, he scared the living shit out of me in this scene. Like, seriously. Like, so much for in Blue Mountain Mysteries, like, finding out what really happened, what really matters, but no, instead, he still jumps to conclusions that Thomas is still getting into mischief, and he punishes him once again by forcing him over to his shed, by forcing him to go to his shed immediately, and then tells him to stay there for the rest of the afternoon, kind of like how a parent would tell their children to go to their room, or, a teacher telling a student to go to like, detention, and then he orders everyone else to get back to work, not letting anyone stand up for Thomas, explaining the real reason that he was actually doing the right thing, and that the Fat Controller was being nothing more than a strict asshole. Yeah, and I agree. Like, I know I was, just as upset with the Fat Controller, in seasons, 17 to 18, and, of course, King of the Rail and Tell the Brave when he was, extremely strict. But he's only like that with Thomas in the film, and he's not even, like, giving him... Yeah, I think he is being kind of a dick to Thomas in some scenes. Like, he could at least be a little, like, fair to him. But, I mean, firm but fair. But, come on, sir. Like, I mean, seriously, the entire scene where Thomas with the Fat Controller berating Thomas like that was so awful that I'd rather just skip. 'Cause, literally, his yelling was so... In fact, parents, of course, complained about this too. And I couldn't agree more, just for this scene alone. I mean, you can understand his point, because seeing that Thomas is damaging, important, property, like Gordon's coaches, the flatbeds with the rails and sleepers, and even the dynamite, but, jeez. So yeah, there it goes. So yeah, that's my little rant. Feel free to say whatever you want, because I'd like to hear what you guys thought of the Fat Controller in this movie, too. Because he goes through a lot, in terms of being cross with Thomas, or kind of being a dick to him, too. So yeah, after all that, of course, the construction project can't go ahead as planned, because, there is no dynamite. And when Marion, stays around, still trying to find the treasure, at night, Thomas is keeping an eye out for Sailor John and Skiff, and that's where, he sees them, and, Yeah, in fact, that's actually one thing in this movie that is actually that I felt is very nice, is that they do have a moral. One moral I can identify as learning to behave yourself, as we do see with Thomas's cheekiness, but also a moral of be careful who you hang out with. Like, be careful, like, with the friends you make. Like, know who your friends are and aren't. Like, for example, like, Thomas doesn't trust Ryan, and he possibly doesn't trust the Fat Controller, for, thinking that he's not the #1 anymore. And the Fat Controller doesn't trust Thomas. Thomas thinks he could trust Sailor John, and Skiff thinks he could trust Sailor John too. So yeah, I actually do like how it's sending, excuse me, it's my toe, sending a message out to kids that know who your friends are and aren't. So yeah, like Sailor John, starts showing more favoritism in Thomas as well as Skiff, and the three of them become, like, best friends and stuff, well, for a while, but we'll explain later. So yes, while they're digging for the treasure, we get our second song in the movie, We Make a Team Together, which is another well-done song. Like, we actually do have more of a tropical island sort of music theme in this, which is actually very nice. Like, with, like, bongos and, that other, like, tropical music horn. I don't know, I don't really pay that much attention to it. Yeah, like, kind of like, African music, per se. And it's funny, at one point when he's helping, like, they even make a little reference to Titanic, where, like, Sailor John is, like, on Skiff, and he's, like, colliding with his arms out, kind of like in the movie Titanic. That's funny, as I see Thomas is making plenty of pop culture references. In fact, the scene where he falls in the cavern and sees the pirate ship, I kind of made a little Goonies reference, where, I thought, wait, this kind of feels like the Goonies a bit, though. Where Mikey, finds the pirate ship. Oh, never mind. So yeah, this is a very wonderful song, as well, like, it does, of course, spread another moral, which, not for this special, but something that has gone on ever since, Thomas, has been around for so many years. That is, teamwork is really important. So yeah, I think that Sam Blewett, who of course has sung most of these songs, does another, vocal performance once again in this. And we even get an actual school choir. What was it? The West Infland School, I think it was? I'll look it up later. So yeah, I'll just talk about it for a few minutes. Yeah, so after looking for the treasure, Sailor John, of course, starts realizing that there's no sign of it. And then he now starts pointing fingers at Thomas, thinking that Thomas had started cheating, was really cheating him all this time. And Skiff, of course, starts, thinking, wait, Thomas, as we do see Skiff is really more loyal rather than holding a grudge. So, yes, Sailor John now has trust issues with our favorite blue tank engine, but they can't continue on any further as Skiff actually starts making this very, hilarious, banana boat reference. It's like, Deo, Deo, day might come and we had to... literally, I was cracking up, when Skiff started starting to sing that song. So, yeah, Sailor John does leave, upset, and now holding a grudge against Thomas. And Thomas starts feeling that, no one will, ever appreciate him that much. Sorry, so I'll see you guys in part 4 of this video.